shows up. All right, hello out there to anyone who might be watching now or watching in the future. Um, I'm here with Damian, aka Sleepy Reader 666. It's
Hello, hello.
hard to imagine if you've ever looked for anything to do with comics on YouTube that you wouldn't have come across Sleepy Reader. That seems almost impossible to me. But just
I don't know about that.
You think so?
I think the algorithm keeps changing, so I feel like I used to be more well known than I am now.
All right, maybe that's
in comic circles.
Yeah, that's probably fair, but
it doesn't matter.
Either way, you've been around a long time. You're one of the old guard of comics YouTube. I used to kind of jokingly refer to you as the mayor. I meant it with affection. You know, you know a lot of people. You've interacted with a lot of people. You pop up in comments and you pop in live chats. You're around, and you've seen a lot of people come and go and come again.
Right. And I do like to support the community, so to speak, support people doing this kind of thing. So I can see why you would call me a mayor from that point of view. I think I've become less supportive in recent years just out of exhaustion.
Sure. Makes sense. Well, as much as we could talk about how long Damian's been on YouTube, I think we should talk about this. Die With Your Mask On, number 3, features the 100 best superhero comics of all time. In this issue, 11 people were invited to make a list of their 100 best superhero comics of all time from their point of view. And then we put those together and made a master list, which appears in this issue. I made a list. Damian, you also made a list. And yeah, what did you think when I reached out to you and asked you if you wanted to participate?
Well, I was surprised that you were doing superheroes.
Sure.
And I was kind of excited to do it. And then when I started doing it, I found it very hard. Like I spent constantly moving things around and saying, does it go there? Does it go there? And I've looked back at my original list and I'm definitely not happy with it now. But the other thing is that my platonic list, like I imagined this in my head as something someone could look at who wanted a reading list. Mm-hmm. So originally I thought I should pick out the best single issues to read, the best 100 single issues of comics to read. Mm-hmm. And I would love a list like that. But after a while, after trying to do it and then you could do things, not necessarily single issues, but like maybe the Galactus trilogy or, little short stints but not long things. But the more I tried to do it, the more I realized I would have to go and reread the entire runs of all these things that I remember being great to figure out which one would be like the best issue to read.
Yeah.
So I think probably one of the oddities of my list is I did try to divide up the Fantastic Four run into maybe 2 or 3 key spots, because I've been rereading. Well, I've reread the Fantastic Four run many times, and recently rereading it out loud with my daughter. And I am convinced that it starts to get good at issue 35. Like that's where the peak starts. And then every issue gets more and more great up to, maybe a little bit before issue 60. So I wanted to put in issue 35 through 60 as originally that would have been my top pick. Mm-hmm. So anyway, that I agonized over that for a while. And then I think I took you started posting other people's lists.
That's right. Yeah, we had a Google document.
I just took a quick look and I saw everyone was just doing an entire run for the most part. So I thought, okay, I give up. I'll do that. So other than the Fantastic Four, I didn't try to parse it down. But like with, say, the John Byrne run of Fantastic Four, I think there's a section of that that's really good. but I haven't reread it recently to just say where that is. And maybe I don't know what I would think if I read it really recently. I guess I've read some individual issues recently, but so I know that some of it I like much more than other parts of it, but I didn't try to do that, try to break it down that way. And I've heard you talk with some other people about Chris Claremont's X-Men run. And that's, I would hate to tell someone to read the entire run, but it's really hard to say where to read. And I don't think any individual issue is that much of a standout. I think it was more the progression of reading that captured so many readers. A lot of the individual, the writing in the individual issues can be very clunky, but overall the structure that Chris Claremont builds of the superhero team dynamic becomes fascinating, I think, for a lot of readers.
I agree. I think if we narrowed it down to Claremont Byrne, because that seemed to be sort of the consensus of the lists, right? If it had been all of Claremont, I think it would have gone a lot lower on the list than it did.
True.
But yeah, part of me wanted to just do the whole thing.
Yeah. And I never read the whole thing.
Yeah.
I think I stopped somewhere in the John Romita part.
Okay.
I can't remember for sure, but that's the other thing about picking entire runs as a reader. Maybe because I started in the 70s when you couldn't read entire runs.
Yeah.
I still I jump around. I don't feel, even though I think Claremont's X-Men run is good, I don't feel any pressure to read the whole thing. And I know some much younger readers that I know feel that they have to start from the beginning and go to the end of things.
Yes.
Which worries me, because they're gonna, like, if they read the Fantastic Four, they may stop at issue 20 or something and never get to the really great stuff.
It's true. Yeah. At a certain point, once graphic novels and trade paperbacks came to be so dominant, the monthly issues really, it's the same thing when I started reading. You just assumed you were never going to read every issue of Iron Man, because
right.
What are the odds you're going to go collect all of these back issues, have the money and the time to do that? But now, people want to start at the beginning, and a lot of times the beginning is not really where you want to start.
Not at all.
Yeah. Have a little comment here from Paula Costa. Finally, I catch one of these live.
Hey,
how are you guys doing? Thanks for being here and watching.
Paula's a great guy. I've learned a lot from his appearances on YouTube. Let's see. Good jumping off points, 150 and 2. Yeah. There's a bunch of good points for X-Men of jumping on or off, depending on what your personal preferences might be. Right.
It really is like a different comic, even though it's written by the same guy. It feels like it's maybe 10 different series over the course of 17 years.
And it was done by the Marvel method, and I guess that, what artist was on it made a big difference.
Yeah, sure, that's true. Well, you did this a while ago. I mean, we turned these lists in, I think, at the end of June last year, so it's now over 8 months ago. But if you can try to put yourself in that headspace, what were the criteria that you thought about? You talked about trying to come up with individual issues, but once you abandoned that, what was the criteria that you used, if you had any? I'm just curious how that worked for you.
Well, you wanted us to do our favorites, and I'm someone maybe different from some of your contributors who thinks that superheroes is a fantastic genre.
Yes.
With all kinds of cool possibilities and resonances and room for imaginative fun. So I think I was thinking in terms of delight, what's most enjoyable. Sure. So I personally always come back to All-Star Superman as the fun superhero comic book for me as a longtime reader. So because I think first-time readers might enjoy it too, but I think it also plays to my longevity as a superhero reader.
Sure.
So Watchmen. So the first thought was, do I put Watchmen at number one? I'm trying to remember. Where did I put? Oh, I'm looking.
Yeah, where did
I put Watchmen? But the problem with Watchmen is it gives me pure delight in loving comics.
Yes,
but not. It's an interesting thought experiment about superheroes, but it's not about the love of superheroes. Where did I put Watchmen?
I
put Watchmen 11. At number 11. So yeah. I didn't want to put it in the top 10 because I felt it wasn't as pure. And so, yeah, looking at my top 10, they're all things that gave me sort of pure pleasure. And then after that, it became more a mix of things. But there's many things in my top 30 that could have been in the top 10. You know, it's painful not, for instance, to choose OMAC and put that in my top 10.
Sure.
But sort of OMAC is something that only after multiple rereads that I come to love. So maybe that's why I bumped it a little higher. But so in the top 10, I put Tom Strong and Nexus. And both of those just embody... Nexus is a more complicated work, but embodies kind of that pure joy of the superheroes, I think.
For sure.
And it's interesting listening to you've done a lot of long talks about this, so I've listened to parts of some and all of some of the other talks, but there's been talk about Frank Miller, and I think it was you saying there was some later Frank Miller Daredevil that you preferred to the original run. And I think
Born Again. Yeah,
right.
I like Born Again more than the just Frank Miller Daredevil.
So another influence on me was context. So I was reading the Frank Miller run on Daredevil in 1981 as it came out, and
Sure.
the thrill of seeing a comic book so much better than all the other superhero comics, and watching it get better with every issue. You could feel Frank Miller trying new things, bringing in new influences with each. This is someone, with some raw genius who's developing their genius on the page, in my point of view, in front of you.
Yeah.
So that makes it more exciting to me because of my context of a reading order than other Frank Miller stuff that might be better. I don't know. I did put Batman Year One ahead of it. So, yeah.
Yes.
And so anyway, that was my basic thing, the sort of love of superheroes feeling that things gave me. Then, I think later in the list, I got sloppier because I see now that I put down Redcoat.
Okay.
But my actual rule to myself was it had to be like hardcore superhero. It couldn't be an edge case. Like I would love to have put Swamp Thing in, but I wasn't going to. But really, Redcoat is just currently coming out. It's my favorite sort of adventure comic that's currently coming out. So I guess I wanted to stick something current in.
Sure.
But I stretched the rules. I can't remember where I put Savage Dragon, but that I don't think I was a big fan of Savage Dragon in the 90s, but thanks to Jared Osborne, I started reading it like 4 or 5 years ago, and now it's kind of my favorite superhero comic currently because it is just sort of pure wacky superhero-ness along with bizarre sex things.
It is. Also, he's gone through times where it's almost a love letter to 70s Marvel.
Right.
The Herb Trimpe Hulk is, I think, his number one influence. He's a huge Kirby guy, obviously, but the Herb Trimpe stuff was, I think, the first stuff he ever read. You had that at number 100, which I think 100 sort of a special spot. You have to kind of put something there to.
I can't now think of. I now wish I'd put that much higher.
Yeah.
I wonder if it's because I was thinking, well, I would like to identify the specific parts of the run that I think are highlights, but
yeah.
And I haven't, like with a lot of things, I haven't read the entire Savage Dragon run. I read a bunch of it when it first started coming out, and then I would dip in every now and then and say, this is interesting, but it's not, it's not making me excited. But then in the 2000 teens, when I jumped back in, then it became like a top book for me.
The first title you have on your list that did not make the final list was Not Brand Ek. And I think Ambush Bug might be the only humor comic that made the list. Some other people voted for, the Wally Wood parodies and Mad. I mean, I guess there aren't a lot of examples of just straight superhero humor titles, but Are you surprised that nothing else cracked the list or had the support?
Did the Mad Wally Wood make the list?
Did not. No.
I mean, that should have, and I guess I should have put that in here because I definitely love that stuff. I think it was hard for me to think, do I break the idea of breaking out just Wally Wood stories from a series of magazines?
Yeah.
But that makes a lot of sense. The reason, it was just your personal favorites. My daughter and I have reread the Not Brand Ek out loud together twice.
Gotcha.
So it obviously works for both her and me.
Yeah.
And it owes a lot to the early Mad magazine. But it's what I think I enjoy it more than the Mad magazine because it's making fun of stuff that I'm more familiar with.
Sure. That makes sense.
And it just has a zany energy that they never recaptured in any other Marvel humor magazines. Mm-hmm. Probably a lot to do with Marie Severin, I think, because her fingerprints are all over that. But also Tom Sutton, surprisingly, was a very good superhero caricaturist, and there's a lot of Tom Sutton in there.
Yeah.
And it's I don't know, they just really went all out in being funny in those and making fun of themselves and DC. Another one, it's funny now that I look at it, is I put Planetary in at number 9.
Yes.
And that's very close to the edge for me. I mean, the people have superpowers, but are they really out there being do-gooders or what have you? But I do love Planetary, so I guess I just...
Here's the great Gary Usher. Didn't remember it, or I definitely would have voted for it for Not Brand Ek.
Right. Well, memory is part of this, right? I mean, you can't do everything. You kind of, when we first discussed this, you kind of thought, well, this is going to be easy for you because you're the superhero guy. But I realized, and you don't like the 70s comics at all. Whereas for me, those were the comics when I was a kid, right? That was all I had because back issues and reprints were very rare. But so for me, but when I look back on it, a lot of my favorites from the 70s didn't fit my strict definition of superheroes. There's Commandy, Swamp Thing, Master of Kung Fu, Dracula. Like those would be amongst my top picks for the 70s, but I didn't.
Sure.
I disallowed those.
Gotcha. Yeah, Master of Kung Fu is one I kind of expected to get a few votes. And I would have expected you, but since you had your own criteria, I can see you and I both disallowed Swamp Thing for the same reasons. Even though I kind of wish I had voted for it now. But I had the same thought you did. I never really thought of it as a superhero comic, even though it has Batman in it, which the presence of Batman may or may not be a determining factor in whether something's a superhero comic.
Well, and if you look at every Swamp Thing comic that's ever been done, some of them are superhero comics more than others. Like he even is a member of Justice League Dark and that kind of stuff. Okay.
Gotcha.
So they have you could argue they've used him sometimes as a superhero, sometimes not.
You brought up memory. And obviously that's something we all relied on to make these lists. What other kind of research did you do? Was it just looking in your collection? Did you go online?
Because I'm lazy, I use the Marvel and DC app a lot to flip around, okay, the all you can eat digital apps. So that might have made me lean more, like it's harder to remember the like I kind of wish I'd taken the time to reread Captain Victory. Should I have made Captain Victory a superhero? Probably not. Mm-hmm. But there's other stuff that was a lot of, during the 80s, a lot of the stuff I liked is by now non-existent publishers.
Sure.
And of course it might not stand. It all kind of looked sort of superhero-ish. Like there was, what was it called? Warp, that was based on a stage play.
Yeah.
I remember liking that a lot. I've been meaning to reread it, so I'm not sure. Yeah. So I think it was easier to research the Marvel and DC, unfortunately. I looked over Nexus. Nexus is another one. I haven't read all of Nexus, but sure. I feel like I've read enough of it to say that it's, one of my all-time favorites. And it's funny that Nexus is an all-time favorite comic in general, and I still haven't read all of it.
Yeah.
I buy art books by Steve Rude, but I don't feel like I need to read the entirety of Nexus. I sort of suspect that all the best stuff was front-loaded, like all of the best ideas, and then it was kind of redoing it as it goes along. But I might be wrong.
I think you're right about that, and that's actually probably true of a lot of stuff. The research part, we all had to individually just do what we wanted. There's no master list of 5 million superhero comics we can all just dig through.
Right.
But you're right. It helps make each person's list even more particular because it depends on what we have sitting in boxes or on our shelves. And then, of course, you can go online and look for other lists, which was a pretty depressing affair whenever I did that. But here's Dan Elson. I'm reading Captain Victory right now. It's so good. So many older comics feel superhero-y, even if they're not typical superheroes. I think that's, Damian, like you, I started out thinking I'm going to have a very narrow view of what I think of as superhero comics. And I did. I think I did have one of the more narrow views of anybody. Mm-hmm. But it was hard for me to keep off some of the stuff, the Alan Moore stuff, the Grant Morrison stuff. It was hard for me to keep a lot of that stuff off because at the end of the day, it is kind of a superhero comic. But part of me just wanted to have stuff like, Paul Levitz's Legion of Superheroes. Which I had in my top 10, but I wanted to be just stuff like that, the whole list.
Yeah.
I just couldn't maintain that level of purity.
I wanted to pick out my favorite Jim Shooter Legion of Superhero comics. I didn't want to say just all of Jim Shooter's Legion of Superheroes, but I think there's some very good issues in there.
Sure, yeah.
And I started looking through my Legion comics, but it just became too hard to I didn't have time to reread them all and decide which ones were good.
Yeah.
And I now kind of think I should have maybe said the Jim Shooter Legion, but it probably wouldn't have made the final list anyway. And I had that same problem. I love the 4 Superman titles from the 60s, Action, Superman, Lois Lane, and Jimmy Olsen.
Yeah.
So in a way, maybe I should have just said all of those as one thing.
Yeah.
But
if you had it, would have made the list. Yeah. If you
really? Had other people done that?
Yeah, because the Weisinger Superman was one that was on the border, and I made an editorial decision with the agreement of Chris Russ and Alex Eklund. But I said, because it's so shaggy, it's just like an entire era of comics, and the only unifying element was the editor, Mort Weisinger. I said, I think we should remove this. That's probably my biggest regret. I do wish the Weisinger Supermans were on here. it's just so hard to define the runs, to say
exactly
these years are when you should look at it. But I agree with you. I think those comics are really special and kind of magical, and they belong on a list like this. And unfortunately, I kind of let protocol get in the way of putting them on there, and that's probably my number one regret for the list, is it not being on there.
I think I flipped through those and was hoping something would pop out at me as like, oh, here's like the perfect example of those, but it didn't happen, and so I think I didn't put it on the list. And I didn't think of just saying the Weisinger years, because I tend to forget that he's the one behind it all.
Sure, yeah.
But I know that, but I forgot it.
Yeah, Paul Acosta brings up a lot of these 80s independents. And I think
Grendel I thought of was a... Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say American Flag at least got a vote. I was surprised Grendel or Badger didn't receive anything. I didn't vote for them, but I was a little surprised nobody else did. What are your thoughts, Damian?
Well, I had recently started reading Grendel from the beginning, and he's not a superhero. Maybe later incarnations are, but I didn't read that far in my reread to remember. And then I've been reading, the current Grendel that he'd been putting out from Dark Horse, and that's not superhero at all. It's science fiction with a robot.
Yeah.
And I thought about the Badger, but I've only read parts of Badger, and I liked them, but I wasn't sure like how good it is overall.
Yeah.
Zombie Tramp I've never read. Hi, Gore.
Yeah. Hi, Gore. That's just Gore checking in. Here's also a Donald Rex saying hello.
Hey, Donald. And Gary Usher was here before, and I'll say, like, all of the writing in here was very impressive. But after I read the way Gary and the way Chris Russ wrote, I wished I had written mine in a different way. They were kind of my favorites.
Interesting.
And like, I rightly or wrongly, kind of in my imagination of what this was to be, was kind of a primer.
Yeah.
Or primer, or whatever the proper word is. So I wrote mine as if you'd never heard of these comics before. And I was introducing them to you. But like Chris on the Fantastic Four write-up for Kirby and Stan Lee, he just wrote a cool essay about Jack Kirby, which I think was much more interesting. And that's assuming you already know what the Fantastic Four is. So I'm going to point out something about Jack Kirby that some people may not know or may not have thought about. If Chris ever watches this, I will posit that Kirby's war experiences are most strongly expressed in Commandy. Okay. And that was my insight on the last reread I did on Commandy, which I totally didn't notice when I read random issues. I know this is off the topic, but random issues scattered about. But when I read all the Commandies in a row, and knowing that Kirby was a scout in the going across the front lines, that's what Commandy's constantly doing. He's running from one battle to another, entering in the middle of all these conflicts and stuff. And what just looks like fun action suddenly becomes this weird emotional distress all the time, where you're constantly thrown into new, dangerous, and bizarre situations. So anyway, I connected what he wrote about Fantastic Four to my Commandy reading experience. But I think in general, that's an important, for those of us who are really into Kirby, an important part of looking at Kirby is wartime experiences.
Yeah, very true.
How did you think about it when you were writing your entries?
I approached it kind of the same way you did. I did not write any of the top 10 entries, and the top 10 entries had the longer page count,
right?
Or the longer word count. So maybe I would have gotten a little more personal if I had done one of those. But I kind of kept it to meat and potatoes as far as what I was doing. I, tried not to just say the same thing in every entry, which is tough. But I mean, I thought yours were stellar. I thought they were fantastic.
Oh, well, I'm glad you thought so. I was less happy with them.
Well, that's the curse of everyone who does everything. They always think their entry is, not as good, but I thought yours were fantastic. I was very happy with everyone's, and I'm actually kind of glad people took different approaches, that, I mean, you mentioned Gary, he took kind of a different approach from title to title. He would,
yeah.
They were all kind of different. So I kind of did a straightforward approach, but I was very happy with the variety of approaches. I certainly wasn't looking for someone to write here's Gary. It was hard not to write about all those problematic Golden Age entries. And of course, I stuck Gary with all the old stuff,
right?
Which was probably a double-edged sword for him. He had voted for all of it, but he kind of became the Golden Age guy. Yeah.
And I feel like the Golden Age is a blind spot.
Sorry, say that again, Damian?
I'm sorry. The Golden Age is a blind spot for me. I wish I knew more. Same here. I picked Plastic Man, but I haven't read all of the Plastic Man. But I think it's all, if you've read 10 issues of Plastic Man, you probably have a pretty good idea.
I think so too. But anyway, I wanted the variety of voices. I wanted people to write them the way they wanted. I didn't provide much context. I think I actually just sent you guys a picture of a page from the old Comics Journal issue and said, here's kind of the example, and that's it. And those are all written differently too. They're all in different kinds of voices with different approaches. And, that I was totally cool with getting a different card from each deck from one of you guys. I wasn't looking for them all to be uniform or have some kind of style guide. That would have been dull. And plus, we're all doing this for fun. The last thing I would want is, it already feels like homework to get assigned something. So the last thing I'd want is for you to be sitting there thinking, I got to write it in this format and do this kind of soulless thing. I wanted people to have enthusiasm about things they really liked and enjoyed. And it was important for me to pair the writer with the subject appropriately too. So even, if there were multiple people who voted for one thing, sometimes it came down to who was getting how many picks, but if I assume, like, obviously I gave you All-Star Superman because you voted for it number one,
right? Yeah, it made a lot of sense.
Yeah, and there were like a few people voted for Copra, and I gave it to Brad Curry because the very first time I really became aware of Brad Curry was on Twitter in the old days, and he did a thread about Copra, and I had mentally bookmarked that. I liked the way this guy talked about this comic. And so I gave it to him instead of some other people, even though other people like Copra and probably like it more than him. But in my mind, I associated people with certain titles. Like for you, the Neil Adams Batman, you weren't the only one that voted for it. But to me, that seemed like a match. Yes. Damian with the 70s Neil Adams, Denny O'Neil title seemed like a 1-to-1.
That's a tricky one. That's a tricky one because you think of it as a Denny O'Neil, Neil Adams Batman, but some of the best issues were actually written by Frank Robbins.
Sure. Yeah.
And many of the issues were not drawn by Neil Adams. Yes. So I did a little mental dance and just tried to think of all the ones that were drawn by Neil Adams and mostly written by Denny O'Neil. Hey, Larasa.
Hi, Larasa. And we credited that. And that was another one of these hard to credit the entries. And I just went with the Neil Adams Batman, I think is what we called it. Because I figure that's what people really think of when they think of that.
But see, that's also tricky too, because before Neil Adams hooked up with Denny O'Neil, he was drawing Bob Haney, Brave and the Bolds, which look like Neil Adams, but the stories are totally goofy and you don't really want to mix the two together. Anyway, that's me getting off into the weeds.
That's right.
On the whole Neil Adams issue.
That's the only reason to be here, is to get into the weeds.
Well, true.
Were you surprised? I mean, you talked about some of the 70s stuff that you liked the most, maybe not qualifying in your mind, but were you surprised there wasn't more 70s stuff, or there wasn't maybe something more specific like Neil Adams? Were you surprised there wasn't more Neil Adams on the list?
I don't think I was surprised, because he did so little interior work.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think I put on you, I really love his short X-Men run.
Yes.
I assume I put it on my list, but I don't know. So there's the 70s maybe is tricky again, because the runs aren't good, right? Individual spots might be. Like with the Defenders, you have a pretty good run. Well, I like a good run with short run with Steve Englehart, and then you have a very interesting run with Steve Gerber, but then you have all kinds of other stuff that's less exciting.
Sure.
And so that I think I just put down the Englehart Defenders run, if I remember right.
Yes, you do have that on here.
Did Omega the Unknown make it? Because I was surprised that I don't think that did make it. And
it didn't. And nothing by Gerber made it, which Ryan Carey was particularly outraged by. I was a little surprised too.
What would Ryan include? Would he include Gerber's Man Thing or Gerber's Howard the Duck? I mean, both of those were eliminated in my mind.
I think he voted for that Defenders run. He voted for Omega the Unknown. He voted for Nevada, the Vertigo series, which I don't really think of as a superhero comic.
Yeah, I've never read that.
He voted for 5 or 6 Gerbers. And yeah, I'm not a huge fan of a lot of that stuff, but I wouldn't have been at all offended or surprised if it had made the list. And I was, I guess I was just a little surprised nothing by him got on here. Well, I guess Omega the Unknown would have been maybe the one that's become known in recent years enough for enough people to have read it.
Right.
It's a pretty uneven comic, that original one.
Yeah, and then, standouts for me in the 70s would be like Jim Starlin's Captain Marvel run and his Warlock run. I did not read his later 80s and 90s returns to those characters, but
I voted for that. I voted for the Death of Captain Marvel, the graphic novel from the 80s, personally.
Did I put that in here? So that's again, I put in Death of Captain Marvel also. So I kind of doubled up there.
Yeah, I think probably not high enough votes. Close.
Another humor comic that I loved, and again, I reread it out loud to my daughter, so that helps with the humor, is Radioactive Man from Bongo Comics.
Oh, okay.
In which he like does number 1 and then number 50. He skips around as if Radioactive Man has this long thing, and each one is a spoof of a different, famous part of comics. Like Infinite Crisis or what have you. So yeah, I think I wrote down here the issues: number 1, number 88, number 216, number 412, number 679, and number 1000. And then I wrote in parentheses, also known as 1 through 6.
Yeah.
So I guess, well, like you said, only one humorous one, unless you count Herbie.
That's true, I guess. Yeah, you're right. I guess Herbie does count as humor.
I was very glad Herbie made it onto the final list. And I kind of wish I'd put him up higher. I think I felt like it's a little more of an edge case. I mean, he is basically a superhero, but it just doesn't have the trappings most of the time. Eventually he puts on a costume and wears a pot as a helmet or something.
Yeah. I think that one boils down to maybe people not being as familiar with it. Certainly the younger voters probably have never seen it or never had the chance to read it. Yeah, it's funny how it's, there's just endless permutations, things that you can just chop up and divide. And you were pretty specific with yours. Like, as you said, you'd have, here's Defenders 1 through 11. Oh, you did have Gerber's Defenders. You had Defenders 20 through 41. You voted
so that's part of the research I did to figure out what issues these people were in, because I would just remember them fondly. But I didn't go back and reread those at this time.
Yeah.
In a way, this becomes a list of things I should reread.
Right. Same here. You voted for a lot of independent superheroes too. And I know you mentioned that earlier, maybe some things not qualifying, but not just Herbie, but you have Copra on here, you have E-Man, Adventures of the Fly, Thunder Agents. And I know these aren't exactly like
Mr. A. Well, I was glad that Mr. A made the final list.
Yes.
Did 1963 by Alan Moore and Company make the final list?
It did make the list, yes. I guess that's another, I don't know if it's quite a humor title, but certainly Alan Moore's editorials are very funny.
Right. There's a wry humor to the whole thing, even though there's not like punchline jokes.
Yes.
Yeah.
1963 was one I was very happy made it. It's one of my favorites.
I tried to insert a number of fairly modern things.
You did,
like Allred and Dan Slott's Silver Surfer. I guess The Vision by Tom King. I think that maybe that did make it.
They did make it.
But then The Human Target by Tom King and Greg Smallwood, I think is my other really favorite Tom King work, and that didn't make it, I don't think.
No, The Vision was the only Tom King that made the list.
And a really weird choice by me, but I just loved it when I read it, was Justice League 3000 by Geffen and DeMatteis.
Yeah, I've never read that one.
Which is probably a footnote to their original famous Justice League run. But
yeah,
it was fresher in my mind, and I think I liked it better than the parts of their original that they had written.
Interesting. Yeah.
Well, now that you're going back to Geffen, at least I get the sense you're going back to Geffen. I would suggest looking at that one.
Oh yeah, I only became aware it existed maybe a year ago, and I think I put it on a eBay watch list. At one of these days, I'll snatch up the run.
Yeah, it should come very cheap.
I would imagine. Yeah.
I put in Immortal Hulk by Al Ewing.
Yes, I was a little surprised that didn't make it.
The problem with that is what was it, like 100 issues, and the first 50 issues were brilliant, and then it became kind of spotty as it went along.
Sure.
So again, it depends on how you look at things.
Yeah, that was one of those real darlings, though, like the Fraction Hawkeye, like the Hickman Fantastic Four, where it was being recommended to everybody as this is the best thing going. And I talked about this on one of the other chats, that the Hawkeye has lasted. People are still interested. They're still putting out. They just put out a new edition, the compact edition or whatever they call them at Marvel. And that has had real staying power. Whereas something like Immortal Hulk or Hickman's Fantastic Four didn't really receive votes on this list. I'm sure a bunch of us have read them. So it was a little surprising to me how things
I think it was in your talk with Chris, you said that Hickman's Fantastic Four and Fraction's Hawkeye were kind of similar, so you were surprised that one ended up sticking more than the other.
Yeah,
and that was like a totally new thought to me. It never occurred to me that there was any similarity between the two.
Well, I mean, they're different comics, but I just mean the heat.
Okay, I misinterpreted.
Yeah, that Fantastic Four run by Hickman was, people were talking about it so much. I think I got it from the library. I went to the library and checked out a bunch of the trades and read them all. And I really enjoyed the beginning, and then it really trailed off, especially once the art changes. And
both of those probably trailed off, because I don't think I read. Well, I think I read it, I think, to the end of until they rebooted it to a new number one.
Sure.
But I just remember the first 10 or 12 issues the most.
Yeah, I think everybody does.
And then, then David Aja wasn't there as frequently, and the other artists were fine, but it just didn't have that zing.
No.
But I think it really stood out as being different from everything else at that time, and I think that really helped. Whereas even though the Fantastic Four was a fun thing, again, though it petered out, it maybe still felt closer to the mainstream of superheroes at the time.
Sure.
I don't know.
Let's talk about nostalgia real fast, if you don't mind. Someone on one of these other live chats I did, I can't remember who made the comment. Forgerelli, maybe. One of you shout it out in the comments if you ever watch this talk with Damian and I. But he made the comment that nostalgia is poison.
Oh yeah, I remember someone saying that.
Yeah, I don't agree with that. I'm assuming you probably don't either. I think nostalgia that's unexamined maybe isn't the best when you're making a list like this. You can't just go, well, I really enjoyed reading that on a car ride, when I was 9, so it's one of the best comics ever made.
Right.
But at the same time, there's nothing wrong with having affection for something from when you were young. So this is getting into psychology, I guess, but how big a role did nostalgia play for you when you were thinking about the stuff that was older? And not just the 70s when you were a kid, but also you were reading these things from the 80s when they came out. Like you said, I mean, if I had been reading Watchmen as it came out month to month, my mind would have just melted out of my ears. I can't even imagine. So, so how does the nostalgia play when you've read so much of this stuff in the past?
Well, here's the thing. There's nostalgia and there's context.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody's view of what's good comes out of context a lot, in a big way. Like with I can't remember I've been watching a lot of your videos. Since you started putting out videos again, it kind of bounced me back also to some of the top 100 Fantagraphics videos that you've done fairly recently. But anyway, someone was saying how much they hated New Frontier by Darwin Cook.
Mm-hmm.
And their criticisms of it were things I never thought of. Like when I read it, I was looking for different things than they were looking for.
Sure.
I came to it with a context, in my case, of, oh, ho-hum, it's another retelling of the Justice League. Let's see what this is like, because it's had a good buzz. And then being blown away by how different it was from any other Justice League comic I'd read. Mm-hmm. And I wish I could remember specifically which of your buddies was tearing it down, because when they were talking, I thought, yeah, that's right. But it still doesn't matter to me because it hit all these other things that in my context made it special. Although the one thing I would argue with him is he said that the 3 wide panels per page were lazy. Whereas I thought that was like something fairly new or unique to do almost an entire graphic novel in those 3 panel pages. So I thought that was not lazy, that was daring. But anyway, we could argue that if I ever meet him in person. But but so that's an example of context. And like my nostalgia for, say, the very first comic I ever read, which was Neil Adams and Roy Thomas's beginning of the Kree-Skrull War, I think Avengers 93. For me, the context of that was not only that comics are brand new, but that I am getting so many science fiction ideas. I became a huge science fiction fan, but this was the first time I heard of androids, the first time I heard of shape-shifting aliens, the first time blah, blah. There was so much science fiction, cool concepts in there, along with fantastic drawings by Neil Adams, that work, so it might be nostalgia, but it's also context. I can see that it's a great comic because there's so much cool stuff in there. Yeah. Now, someone who knew all that cool stuff already before they read it, wouldn't say that's a great comic because Yeah, I've seen space travel and other galaxies and all of that before, but I was 10 years old and I hadn't. But how to say, I don't. So that's what I'm saying is context and nostalgia are closely related, because then the context changes, right? Because when I was reading Frank Miller's early Daredevil run, I'd read a ton of superhero comics, so I had the context of seeing that this was different. Again, kind of like with why I responded positively to Darwin Cook.
Yeah.
And someone else, who maybe reads all of the Frank Miller Daredevil in roughly the same time period, judges them against each other rather than against what what I judged it against.
Sure.
So, and that's, yeah. And you can't escape your context, right? You can't, there was the context of a little kid, there's the context of a 64-year-old man. And, and I guess that's why I say, it's only now, or maybe, starting in my 50s, where I say that superheroes are a great genre, just by the fact that I can still get something out of it. Different than what I got out when I was 10. But it's not just, for me, not just that I keep going back to those old 70s books. And I will agree that overall the 70s was weak from a certain point of view. But it was like, because you mentioned kind of wanting to go back to the stuff you read when you were a kid and a little before. The golden age of comics was the few years just before I started reading comics that I'd missed out on, that I saw all these references to.
It's funny how that works.
And and I think, looking at it now, in the kind of Marvel superhero comics I like really came into being around 1966. And when I hit them in 1971, they were still very close to that. By 1977, they really had lost something.
Yeah. So
for me, a kind of golden age of Marvel Comics might be 1966 to 1974, something like that.
Sure.
But that's different for everybody. So when I talk about the 70s, maybe that's what I'm thinking of. And when you talk about the 70s, you're thinking of something else.
Yeah. Well, and all these eras, we can lump them together, but it doesn't really work like that, right?
Right.
I mean,
right.
When people talk about the 90s being terrible time for comics, it's not really true. There's tons of great stuff coming out in the 90s. It's just the Marvel and DC stuff kind of got as bad as it could get. And the Image stuff wasn't great either, but there's great alternative comics. There's manga coming over. There's European stuff coming over. There's things like, the Marvels and, there's other things just popping up out of the blue. There's no, in the 70s the same way. There's good stuff all over the place. Chris, Chaos and Comics, said to me online just this last week, he loves my bit of saying, that I hate the 70s, and I'm like, it's mostly a bit at this point. Like I know there's good stuff and there's stuff I like from that era. But I will admit that I think that for me, the golden age of comics in general is the 80s. I really think that was all the different kinds of comics seemed to flourish at the same time. And we've had great stuff since. We had great stuff before, but that was just one time where like the alternatives and the independents and the mainstreams and every kind of comics there seemed to be interesting things happening. Were you surprised the 80s dominated the list as much as it did?
In retrospect, no, seeing all the people who contributed.
Sure.
And I agree with you. The 80s was fantastic. And I think it's for one reason, the comic book shops.
Yeah.
In the late 70s, there were probably, a dozen comic book shops around the country. And then by 1982, 83, it was exploding. And that created a place to discover things, rather than just the spinner rack. So I might have been coming in for Daredevil, but I also picked up Harvey Pekar, It was all in the same place, and so it gave, and it made Cerebus going from a shaky concept, when there was hardly any stores, to suddenly, they were making a really nice living doing Cerebus, better than most regular comic book artists.
True.
So it really broke things open. So when people attack comic book shops, I understand their attacking of them, but I also feel like, without those comic book shops, the comics you love probably wouldn't exist. So let's not completely throw them out in the bin of history.
Do you think that back then the mainstream, the Marvel and DC regular titles, do you think they benefited from the same thing? The fact that there was so much exciting things happening in other kinds of comics that maybe it made them a little more ambitious? Because even regular Marvel and DC titles, there were nice long runs by really talented people during that period.
Right.
It's hard to imagine like a Simonson Thor popping up, at a different era, but it really felt like at that point he could kind of go for it.
And even the Legion of Superheroes, I think, benefited because I think along with feeling the heat, the competition from other places, the writers now knew that they had readers who were paying attention over a long stretch of issues.
Yeah.
And so they no longer wrote, they no longer had to sort of dumb down each issue because probably it's someone's first issue. I mean, they still in the 80s kept that in mind in a much better than they do now. But I think they all, something like the New Teen Titans, they were able, or the Legion of Superheroes, they were able to build because they knew there was a strong readership following them.
Yeah.
And both companies were able, to start doing miniseries and experiment with things like that the regular market didn't like the graphic novels like Death of Captain Marvel and everything.
Yeah.
So I think it had a huge effect on both companies. I feel like DC did a better job with it in the long, looking at the whole of the 80s compared to Marvel, but Marvel also, and I love the Epic line from Marvel, with Dreadstar and things like that.
Mm-hmm. So you were, your age, you were really coming of age and were a young adult in your 20s when a lot of this was happening.
Right.
What were your thoughts when superheroes started to get more quote unquote serious? When Alan Moore and Frank Miller were doing this stuff, what were your thoughts? Were you on board and excited, or were you put off by it?
I was completely on board because if you think about it, the first Alan Moore I encountered, I was 19 or 20.
Okay.
I'm trying to remember when Warrior came out. So I think Warrior and maybe his Swamp Thing were about the same time.
Yeah. Pretty close. Yeah.
And I'm not sure how old I was then, but probably 19 or 20. Okay. So, and Frank Miller came a little before that. So Frank Miller kind of drew me back in saying, I can like comic books again. And then I found Alan Moore, and I was reading other things that weren't as good as those, but were better, like say Bruce Jones's Khazar or Khazar.
Sure.
And other comics like that it created a new itch in me to find something a little more sophisticated. So it kind of came for me at the perfect age. I did not read Watchmen as a 14-year-old or something, and then later reread it and say, wow, this is good. I read it. I guess by the time Watchmen came out, I was like 24.
Yeah.
So it was all kind of perfect for me, actually.
Yeah.
And then when the Todd McFarlane, Jim Lee thing came out, it was the opposite of perfect for me.
That's right.
A lot of my friends,
a
lot of my friends were 10 and none of my comic book friends now were 10 and 12 when those come out. And so they still have really strong feelings about Jim Lee and Todd McFarlane that I just never ever had. I didn't outgrow them, I bought one issue of a Todd McFarlane Spider-Man and one issue of Jim Lee X-Men, and that was all. But I was busy reading all that other good stuff that you're talking about that was out there in the 80s. The Vertigo and the Fantagraphics books and John and Quarterly and a Kitchen Sink and all of that.
Yeah.
And that was Epic still around then? But anyway, there was just all that kind of stuff. And then I did fade a bit in the mid to late 90s, and then I discovered that the libraries had comic books now, and that's when I caught back up.
Yeah.
So like that's where I although that's a little later, but that's where I first read New Frontier from the library. So I just said, oh, here's this book looks interesting, and pulled out of the library without knowing what it was really. Gore is anything but orthodox as a reader.
Yes, that's very true. He was chanted by the medium in his frustration that they couldn't draw like that. I think a lot of us feel that way.
One thing that nostalgia doesn't work for me is rereading heavy metal.
Oh yeah.
And Gore makes me think of it because he may disagree with me, but sure. I still love the art in heavy metal, but it's a lot of what I reread there seems pretty stupid.
Yeah.
When heavy metal came out, I was 15 or 16. And so that was probably the right age for that.
Yeah, that's perfect.
Naked ladies. And this is sophisticated adult work. But I mean, I love heavy metal, and I've been trying to collect an entire run from, I don't know, 77 to 85 or something.
Same here. Yeah.
But it's really for the art and, occasionally for the writing, but mostly the art.
There are some surprises in there. But yeah, you're right. I think your assessment's pretty dead on.
So nostalgia can be undercut.
It can be. Yeah. Here's Gore. He's angry. Take it up with I'm looking for Dewey, Cheatham, and Howe, Gore.
Uh-oh. Now I'm in trouble.
So let me ask you, what was there anything about the final list that you didn't like? Was there anything you were offended by or outraged by?
Whoops. Where did I put it? Not really, no. Okay. I think I was a little disappointed that Watchmen came in number one.
Yeah.
And I don't know why.
I was
maybe you just want variety, But what are you going to do? I mean, I voted for Watchmen at number 11, so I helped contribute to its position. I can't find it now. There was one comic I never heard of.
Okay.
You know what? And I guess I need to reread it, but I look back at League of Extraordinary Gentlemen and I don't think very much of it.
I don't either. I didn't vote for it.
So much of Alan. You could just have a list of Jack Kirby and Alan Moore.
Yeah.
And that would cover 90% of great superhero comics. But
23 of our list came from those two guys. So
right. And there could have been even more.
Yeah, I voted for 10 Alan Moore, and I thought this is probably excessive. And then 13 made the list.
Yeah, I was forcing myself to hold back on Alan Moore, so I decided not to vote for Promethea because I found that to be one of his shaggier works.
Sure.
So I thought, well, all these other works are so on target, and Promethea to me felt a little weaker.
Yeah.
I thought Prophet was odd. I think Prophet is great by Brandon Graham, but I think he basically turned it into not a superhero story at all.
Yeah, it's science fiction, right?
Right. I guess it was sort of I never really read the original Rob Liefeld stuff, but I assume that was more superhero-like.
Yeah, you didn't miss it.
But it's a very wonderful, sophisticated science fiction story.
Yeah.
I was glad to see Silver Surfer Parable make it. And that's kind of an edge case because it was not written like a superhero story, but I do think it's one of the best things Stan Lee's been involved in.
Sure, yeah.
Outside of Jack Kirby stuff and Dick stuff. I'm trying to find the one that I didn't even know existed.
Yeah, I'm curious about that too.
I do feel pretty strongly that the Spirit is not a superhero.
Yeah, let's get into this. Like, you're the Eisner guy.
You can argue, you were talking about, and I agree with you when you said, you could count all kinds of things as superheroes like James Bond or Sherlock Holmes.
Sure. Yeah.
The Spirit, least of all, less than those guys.
Do you think so?
James Bond wins every fight. Spirit gets beaten up. He's kind of blundering through things. He's usually not the center of the story.
Well, he has a name. He wears a costume. He fights
villains. He has a mask. I guess he always wears the same suit.
Yeah. And he fights villains,
yeah, I guess so.
I know in one of the chats you said Eisner didn't think he was a superhero and that was good enough for you. Right. I would argue that since Eisner talked out of both sides of his mouth most of the time, I think that was really a way of him to say, this thing I made to appeal to superhero readers is way better than superhero comics, so therefore I don't consider it a superhero comic. I think that was him wanting to have it both ways,
I take Eisner more at face value than you do.
Well, listen, I think the Spirit is beautifully done. It's not my particular cup of tea, but I had no problem with it being on this list or any other list. It's recognized as an important work, but I do think that's a little bit self-serving on his part. I think he made it as little like a superhero as he could, but he was still that's why it existed, is because they wanted something superhero-y to be in a supplement, so but the problem is all these arguments all of us make, well, I don't consider that a superhero comic, they fall apart so fast. I mean, it's see, here's a Paulo Costo, James Bond and Sherlock Holmes are superheroes, and he might be being tongue-in-cheek there, but I mean, it's weird how pliable the superhero is, right? I mean, really, we can't.
It is very pliable, and there's so many shades of gray at the end of the day.
Yeah,
like you,
I thought of a more traditional way to look at it, but I had to admit that isn't how it always works.
Because across the way from the Spirit is the Spectre.
Yes,
and as used by Michael Fleischer, was he a superhero? He was just a bizarre
killing machine,
a bizarre killer of villains. But
yes, yeah.
But I was kind of being glib saying what Eisner says is good enough for me, because it is on my own judgment that he's not a superhero.
I know. I'm just giving you a hard time.
But when Eisner said it, I did say, yeah, that's what I feel too. I think, the wonderful thing about the Spirit, and maybe this is again going off the rails, but something that modern writers of superheroes and of serialized stories forget, is the Spirit was not, the Spirit comic was not about the Spirit. The Spirit was a character in a series of, to me, mostly pretty fun short stories.
Yeah.
And that's really true of a lot of characters. Like if you read Robert E. Howard's Conan, the actual stories, very few have Conan as the protagonist. He shows up somewhere in the story. But a lot of modern writers of current superheroes feel that it's all about the arc of that one character.
Yeah.
And that becomes a problem with a serialized character, because an arc implies completion. But serialized things like most superheroes that we're talking about, they never come to an end.
Yeah.
So I know there's other examples of earlier, even the early Fantastic Four. It was partially their story, but it was also like the Black Panther story, or the story of the Silver Surfer. Like, it wasn't just, where is the relationship of Sue and Reed going? And so I think modern writers have a problem where they've forgotten that kind of maybe pulp tradition of making your hero a vehicle for other stories. Anyway, that's just one of my thoughts about how superhero stories are written.
I think you're right. I mean, the art of the subplot has been lost because they're all writing 6-issue stories devoted to what is going to happen. What's this character going to do to overcome this? And in the old days, there would be a plot line bubbling in the background of the newsroom in Spider-Man for 2 years. I mean, for 2 years, they would tease things, and then all of a sudden it would turn into the main plot line. But they don't write that way anymore. And some fans would say that's good. I don't like that. I don't like, but I would argue that if you're doing serialized monthly comics, something that I don't read anymore, so my opinion is really invalid. But if I'm following something month to month, I want to feel like I'm following something month to month. Otherwise, why am I not just buying it in a book?
Right. Yeah. The charms of the serialized story are a little bit lost, even though they're still serializing them.
Did you figure out which title you hadn't heard of?
I can't find it.
I'm just curious.
I'm sorry I didn't vote for the Rick Veitch ones. I haven't read them, and I bought them. I think either because of you or maybe because of Ryan at some point, but I haven't read them yet.
Ryan, yeah.
Silver Surfer Black, I thought was a funny choice. It was one of the few modern ones. It does have amazing art. I think its story-wise is negligible at best. It's basically filler.
Sure.
Donny Cates was writing filler that was a bridge between one story idea and another. Man, what happened to the one I didn't know? I had heard of Miss Fury, but I didn't know she came from the newspapers. I thought she was a Golden Age comic book character.
Yeah. I was glad that made it. Even I didn't vote for it, but I was glad it made it, just in the interest of something different. And this list is sorely lacking in diversity, so every little bit helps.
I'm glad other people also thought about God and Science by Jaime Hernandez.
Yeah, it did well.
I thought that was a really cool book. I mean, very different from your normal superhero story, but 100% about superheroes in his own way.
Yeah. Same for the Death Ray by Klaus, another one.
Yeah, I love the Death Ray.
Yeah. I don't even know if I originally had it on my list, and then I saw it on somebody else's and thought, oh yeah, I need to put that on there. And I actually reread it for the list, and that's a book I've enjoyed kind of more each time I've read it over the years.
I confess I put that on probably because I was searching for something that wasn't, your standard. Sure. I did like it a lot, but I don't know if it popped into my head immediately or I had to think about it. Dang, I just can't find the one that I didn't know.
Yeah. Well, to me, that's there were things on here I haven't read. But I'm actually happy to hear there was something you hadn't heard of, because guys like us have been around a while. We've looked at a lot of comics, and so if there's stuff that's new to us, then that makes me think the issue will have some things that are new to a lot of people.
Okay, The Jam. I think I might have heard that name, but I'm not sure. I didn't know that one. I think there was another one. Darn it, I can't find it.
I think you would like The Jam. It's very good-natured. It's basically a regular guy who puts on a costume and goes around to he doesn't even really fight that much, but he's patrolling. But it's very 80s independent comics, and it doesn't have a lot of the kind of edgy, bitterness that, that some comics have to try to seem different,
I thought it was interesting that Invincible made it.
Yeah.
But anyway.
Number 52.
Yeah.
Do you like that?
I guess it was just The Jam.
Yeah. Do you not like Invincible?
I guess I just didn't perceive it as being popular on a critical level.
Sure.
But anyway, I was just wrong. I'm just wrong about it. I used to read that out of the library, and I stopped at some point when I just got tired of all the blood.
Sure. Yeah.
So I guess the rest of the story didn't grab me enough to get past all the blood after a while.
Well, it runs for 150 issues or something. It
Right.
goes a long time. I actually haven't finished it either. I know I've read more than 2/3 of it, but I haven't finished it. But yeah, Kirkman, I think, is a guy that nobody thinks of as being critically loved, but a lot of people sure have read his comics. So
Right. And I'm just it's my little corner of snobbiness, I guess, about
sure. Yeah.
About Invincible.
We all have them. That's what makes it interesting. Well, Damian, any other thoughts about this list? Anything you want to get off your chest?
Just overall reminded me how much I like superheroes as a genre.
Nice.
Also reminded me that I'm not quite as much of a superhero reader as you would think.
Yeah.
Because all those like things I mentioned, favorites from the 70s that I don't count as superheroes.
Sure.
And while I am only minorly interested in sort of the really artsy comics that you like, or the autobio comics that you like, mm-hmm. I'm a genre reader. So I read a lot of genre comics, but superheroes are just one of the genres at this point that I read.
Yeah.
But I think it's a really cool genre.
I agree with you. I think people think I'm a superhero hater. I'm not. Right. I actually never have been. I don't really like their dominance. That's kind of what rubs me the wrong way. But I long ago quit reading new superhero comics, like monthly comics. But I'm always susceptible. If I hear something's good, I'm willing to go check it out. And I stay away from the franchises, the monthly Batman, Superman, Spider-Man, X-Men. I won't touch those. Yeah. But self-contained comics, I'll read a Batman miniseries or something if I hear it's fun. But I hope that both the love and the skepticism comes through in this issue. I actually don't think there's much skepticism, but I know you've watched some of these chats, so you've seen some people are very much kind of like, this is not something that's my favorite thing. But everyone was still able to come up with a list of 100 titles. I think that says something too, that it's a pretty deep vein, right?
Yeah. I realize I've always meant to go back and read the Doom Patrol run from Morrison.
Yeah.
I only read random issues at the time it came out, which didn't make much sense to me. So like Ryan was upset, that Animal Man was so much more successful than Doom Patrol on the list.
Yeah.
But it might be that it's just one that more people have read.
I was
read the entirety.
I was happy. I thought Doom Patrol would be way higher, and I like Animal Man a lot more. So, once again, it's the
and I need to read Enigma. So anyway, it's a lot of good reminders of things I need to read. I need to read Rick Veitch.
Yes. I'd love to hear what you think of Veitch. Well, thank you for doing this, Damian. I really appreciate it.
Okay. Well, it's been a lot of fun.
All right.
Thank you for being obsessed by lists.
Yes, that's right. Thanks for being drawn into my obsession.
I had one other thought about lists. Please. Because your name, Loading the Canon, and your name of your magazine, Canon.
Yes.
The whole concept of, is there a canon of any given kind of creative work?
Yeah.
These lists help us think about the canon.
Yes.
Like they're a tool for processing. They might be wrong, and the canon, defining a canon, but they help us sort of explore the idea of what was important and what wasn't. Because I'm not normally thinking about lists, and I'm kind of just reading what I'm reading, and just maybe making statements off the cuff. But the lists allow you to think about things in a more orderly way. So I would defend lists on that level now that I've been involved with this.
Yeah, here's Gore agreeing with you.
That's what I like about Gore. He usually agrees with me.
I feel the exact same way. I think people, maybe they see my channel name or the name of the zine, they think that I'm trying to craft some monument to greatness and only this. It's actually the exact opposite. Like I would be happy for people to discuss anything in a serious or passionate way and try to find the merit in almost anything, even things I think are horrible. I would love to read, like Brad Curry, one of the list makers. I told him my dream is for him to write something defending Rob Liefeld. I would love to read that,
Right.
A person I think is smart writing about something that everyone dislikes, I think that'd be very interesting. And so that to me it's meant to be a conversation starter, not a conversation ender.
Right.
I would hate for someone to look at this issue and think this is it. These are the top 100. There's anything else these guys think is trash. That's not true at all. We voted for hundreds and hundreds of comics.
Right.
These are just the ones that got the most votes. And I think, like you said, to me, your list would be different if you made it today, and mine certainly would be. And I bet it would be different for everyone. We might all have the same top stuff, but
right,
as it goes further down, we would be moving things would be falling off the list, coming back on the list. I like to think, I mean, it's finished. It's a done list. We're not going to redo it, but there's no reason somebody else couldn't. There's reason somebody else couldn't make their own list and have it be in conversation with this one. And I think we did a good job. I think we made a good conversation starter and something that you can revisit, largely because of the wonderful writing from you and the other contributors. You can come back to this over time and revisit it and find more things that you might want to discover or just think about differently. Maybe you go and you read New Frontier and then you go and you reread what you wrote about it to see how that matches up. I just hope it's useful for the people who do decide to, here, I'll shamelessly shill canonzine at bigcartel.com. But
to people who've watched this long.
That's right. Well, not a very good salesman, Damian.
Well, I imagine that you and Chris and the person whose name I keep forgetting, is it
Alex? Yeah.
Alex, put a lot of time into this thing that's not paying you any money or, getting you any great awards or, doing anything. So it's great that you guys put all this effort and work so hard to make a really fair list like this. Another thing I thought about, sorry to keep having more stuff. Chris's original statement about, it's funny how in superheroes, they don't have this problem about having a canon and talking about what the great stuff is. One thing to remember coming from your ultra indie perspective, as I think of it, is that superheroes are their own little underground. They're a bigger underground maybe than your underground, but they're still an underground thing that has managed to be self-perpetuating for these 80 years or 90 years. So it's a nice narrow little funnel which makes it easy to canonize, to look, you can look at the history of it and everything. The history of comics in general is more scattershot, the stuff that Fantagraphics had to put on their list where they're drawing from comics or comic strips and individual panel comics and all sorts of other things, along with what we regularly think of comic books. So the narrow focus and the long history, I think, lead to an easy sort of group think about it.
True.
So anyway, with the world of outside the Fantagraphics world, for a shorthand, it's always harder to pinpoint that. So anyway, that was my thought about you and Chris talking about that.
That's a very good point. I think some people might look at that tunnel vision and see it as a negative. But
right.
You're right that when you talk about decades and decades, you do start to build up certain attitudes. Things last longer than you might think. I mean,
Right.
OMAC was a canceled comic, right? It lasted 8
Yeah.
issues. People hated that era of Kirby. A lot of people dumped all over Kirby in those days.
Yes.
And now we make a list and it comes in at number 20. Like that's pretty amazing how things can sort of, their reputations can change over time.
Yeah. And if you look at Comics YouTube, you'll see OMAC come up every few years. People keep rediscovering it.
Yes.
So, yeah.
Yeah. And hopefully they'll use this list to rediscover or discover other new things. Hopefully. All right. Well, Damian, It's good to talk to you. Thank you so much. Thanks to everyone who was brave enough to last all the way until the end. My channel has more of these chats with the other list makers. This will be the last one. So I was very happy. I got to get 10 out of 11 guys on here. One of our list makers is anonymous, so he doesn't do YouTube.
But, okay.
Raymond Savage is a pseudonym, but everyone else was kind enough to come on camera, including multiple people who've never been on YouTube. So thank you to them. And thanks, Damian, for being my last guy. And thanks to everybody in the chat. Gary Escher, Gore Vidal, Paula Costa, LaRosa was here. Donald Rex was here earlier. Dan Elson. Very nice. Great turnout. Thanks, Damian.
Okay. Talk to you again sometime.
All right.